$20,000 a month, $20,000 a week. Which would you rather have? Oh, and by the way, an 8-unit apartment building in Victoria, let's say it's around $4 million. I can buy it for $2 million and get $1 million of vendor financing. Compare buying an 8-unit apartment building in Victoria to a so it's a much kind of wealth building rather than just usage kind of model. For me is where it's at, and that's where my future is. Automation now, I mean, there's so many things that you can do with automation, right? Missed opportunity is kind of what hurts the most. You should have that in any real estate deal you're doing.
Welcome back to the Wealth Through Real Estate show. Today we have Liza Rogers, a trailblazer in real estate investing who has made significant strides in multifamily properties, boutique hotels, and the founder of WREN, the Women's Real Estate Network. Liza, it's great to have you on the show. Let's dive right in. So, who or what has been the biggest inspiration in your real estate journey, and how has that shaped your approach to investing?
Love it. First of all, I'm really happy to be here, El Ray. Thank you for the invitation and thank you for that lovely introduction. Yes, my real estate journey has been very interesting. I never imagined for a minute that I would even necessarily be on a real estate journey, but here we are. So big inspirations for me, I think from the perspective of real estate investing in Canada, I would definitely have to say the guys at the REN Network, Don Campbell for sure.
Oh, yeah.
I think many of us who have been in real estate for a while, we know who Don is.
Yeah.
I do sometimes talk a little bit about the HGTV romance and how a lot of the HGTV shows, really got us women kind of like, oh, maybe we could do that too. But I find their methods a little bit, I kind of refer to it as the HGTV romance, right? It's like everything looks very romantic, but I don't quite know how realistic it is. So I definitely would say Don Campbell at REN, the Real Estate Investment Network. And he's written lots of books. He's been inspirational. He's very practical. He's pragmatic. And I still find him quite inspiring, especially in the political climate that we're in right now with where we are with investing in Canada. So it's great to hear his cut through on a lot of the things that we need to just get straight to the point on.
I love it. Yeah, Don Campbell is a must for anyone looking to get into real estate investing at all. How did you transition from multifamily investments to boutique hotels? I'm really intrigued to hear this.
Yeah, so it's actually quite an interesting story because when I started REN, my background is tourism and hotels. I've worked at 2 Olympic Games. I've been in tourism for years. I've worked on cruise ships, which I often talk about as the biggest co-housing property on the planet. I used to joke and say, you're 1 minute away from the captain. You're 1 minute away from your boss. You're 1 minute away from your boyfriend, and you're 1 minute away from ships on your ex-boyfriend. So that's kind of how ships works. But the journey with going to boutique hotels was that actually that's where it started, because I was in this gig economy, and the gig economy, let's say 10, 15 years ago, was not quite the norm. So I was kind of an early adopter to the remote working, location independent, let's live this incredible lifestyle and I'll worry about my retirement later. Excuse me. And then when I got to a little bit older, not old, but, in my 40s, I'm thinking, okay, I've got to put down some roots now. How am I going to do this? So I'm going to take my passion for boutique hotels and events, and I'm going to start buying youth hostels or boutique hotel properties and buying them collaboratively with women. And we'll have these great properties that can make us some money, and we'll have them for our futures. And that just escalated from there. Buying the boutique hotels was actually a harder sell to get women on board. So we started doing the more sort of traditional things, buying a condo together. We bought a couple of pre-sales together. We bought a fourplex together. We bought a duplex together. And Now we're up to 8-unit apartment buildings and doing land assembly. So it actually started at the boutique hotel piece, and now I'm actually coming full circle back to that. And it seems like right now it's massively on trend. I'm hearing boutique hotel coming from everybody in the US, all over the place, especially with the short-term rental changes, with the number of mom and pop businesses that are being sold. And so, I mean, yeah, we could talk about the whole boutique hotel phenomenon for probably an hour.
Yeah, yeah. And that's still a strategy that you actively pursuing, right?
It is a strategy that we are actively pursuing now. So we have been pursuing, as I say, multifamily has been definitely a passion and an interest.
Yeah.
But I live in BC, and I'm not quite sure how much you've heard about what's going on over here, but investors are running for the hills. And so why would I buy an apartment in Victoria that's maybe, let's compare apples to apples, or apples to something else, an 8-unit apartment building in Victoria, let's say it's around $4 million. I can buy a 12-unit boutique hotel in Mexico for $2 million and get $1 million of vendor financing. The income on that also in Victoria, you know, maybe you're getting somewhere between 20, 22 on that same building. You do the boutique hotel and you're getting 20 grand a week. So boutique hotels for me is where it's at, and that's where my future is, and I can't wait to get down to Mexico again and continue that trend for this winter.
That is that sounds so exciting. What's your ultimate vision for this?
You know, one of the things that we talk about a lot with women is that women are living longer. They need to build wealth for a longer time. They keep forgetting that because they're living longer, they actually need to build wealth for a longer time. They've got a longer runway.
Yeah.
And it's very highly likely that we are going to be alone for a significant portion of our future. And I don't know if women or men have actually kind of figured this out yet. We know there's a loneliness epidemic around the world. I mean, I don't think there's anybody that's not talking about that anymore. It's a topic that comes up in conversation almost as much as real estate comes up in conversation. And so it's something that as a woman and as a woman who is single, you know, I look at who do I want to hang out with for my future? How long am I going to be around? Where do I want to be? And so the idea was always, well, let's get groups of women together. And if we buy, you know, maybe we get 5 people to buy a property in Mexico, we get 5 people to buy a property in Thailand, we get 5 people to buy a property in the south of France. And then we basically set up an association so we all have ownership or use of each of those properties. And so the ultimate vision is to have a portfolio of boutique properties around the world that we can all leapfrog and share, and kind of like our own personal timeshare.
That's what I was thinking.
But unlike a timeshare where you're not actually getting the income or the appreciation, we would structure it so that we get the income from the property and the appreciation. So it's a much kind of wealth building rather than just usage kind of model. And we've looked at quite a number of models that are starting to do this around the world, and it's happening. It's definitely happening. We're living in that location independent remote world now. The governments haven't quite figured it out yet, you know, and on one hand, they're giving away digital nomad visas, encouraging you to come and work in their country. And on the other hand, they're saying, oh, we don't want any more tourists. So, you know, we're cutting out Airbnb. So they don't quite match each other a lot of the times. So that's the ultimate vision. Have a portfolio of boutique hotels that we could eventually, if we want to, turn into our own personal retirement homes. None of us are going into a traditional retirement home, especially post-COVID.
Yeah.
Who the heck wants to go into a government-run retirement home, right?
Yeah. Yeah. No, I love that strategy, though. It's sort of like people can save for the retirement, but still have the benefits of vacations.
Yeah, and have incomes coming in from a boutique hotel. You know, one of the things that's key right now is with the short-term rental properties being closed down, you've got to be careful what you buy. So a lot of people aren't necessarily buying a single family home as a short-term rental anymore. So why not get together with a group of friends and buy a boutique hotel instead? Because the government's not going to come along and say, oh, you own a boutique hotel? Oh, I'm sorry, you can't have people staying there for less than 90 days, which is the case that we have in BC right now.
Yeah.
People can't stay for less than 90 days. Like, what is that?
That is insane.
So it makes so much more sense.
So for those people who like, this is a new concept to me. Could you highlight some of the differences between just your standard short-term rentals and your boutique hotels?
Yeah. So if we look at a standard short-term rental, so say you and I decide to go and buy a 4-bedroom house in Victoria. Let's just use Victoria because that's where I am right now. You know, you've got a booming tourist area. We've got a hotel shortage right now. Hotels in the summertime in Victoria are $400 a night for little 3-star hotels that you used to be able to get for $100 a night. Now they're going for $400 a night. And then you have all of these restrictions. So you've got the city who right now, my understanding is they have 4 municipal bylaw officers policing Airbnb. So they're putting time, effort, and energy into catching people who are breaking the rules with their short-term rental. Now, a lot of us in Canada right now are feeling like the government has really overstepped.
Yeah.
I, being that person who loves tourism, loves travel, host events, I don't want to be told that I must take that I must take a long-term tenant in and then have to give them 3 months notice to get them out, and getting them out has to be under a pretty much extenuating circumstances. So take that kind of traditional tenant. Then the improvement was that for someone like me, shifting that into a short-term rental, it's like, okay, now I'm taking in guests, right? I've got people who are guests. You have a guest contract. You've got, you're not going to get stuck with someone who's terrorizing you in any way, shape, or form for any length of time. And so the short-term rental model was kind of a good gap for people who, you know, I still need to make some extra money.
Yeah.
I've got this great property I want to make some extra money on, but I'm afraid to have a long-term tenant because no matter what happens, you're pretty much stuck with them. And I know there's lots of great tenants out there, and there's also, you know, there's good tenants, bad tenants, good landlords, bad landlords, but not having the option feels like a real infringement to me. And so sort of going from traditional to short-term, you know, having that house, saying, hey, you know, let's rent it out for a week, let's rent it out for a month, let's rent it out when we go to Mexico for 3 months. Having, you know, a furnished property, having a good cleaner, having good systems, all of those things it still requires work, but you can kind of do it with yourself, with your business partner, with your spouse, with your best friend. And you've got, you know, a door or two that's making good money. So with the boutique hotel piece, it's just kind of like, you know, putting that on steroids, right? So now you buy something that's maybe 10 rooms, which you can do with 2 or 3 friends. Now you've got something that if you're buying it overseas, you can buy for a much lower cost. And in markets like Puerto Vallarta, Mexico, I mean, they're literally paying $20,000 a week for villas down there. So you get the opportunity to buy in really interesting destinations where the business license for a boutique hotel is fairly easy to acquire, whereas a business license for a short-term rental, now you've got to come and have it inspected, and there's no guarantee that you're going to get approved. I've been with Airbnb since the very beginning. I was hosting a place back in Australia, in Bondi Beach, back in 2012, when I don't think Canada was really even on the Airbnb bandwagon yet.
Yeah.
But the restrictions now of the hoops that we have to jump through are just so much more difficult. Whereas, you know, an existing boutique hotel and looking at something that's existing to me makes the most sense. Lots of mom and pops are selling their little boutique hotels. There's tons of room for adding value. You know, you take some of these little places they're not online, they're not digitized, they don't have automatic entry systems. So they're like, you know, still mom and pop are getting up at 2 o'clock in the morning for those late arrivals. you can systematize and digitize these places, there's just so much more opportunity. So it's just one of those things. And again, like that kind of that kind of thing that clinches the deal for a lot of the women that I'm finding is, oh my God. And then 5 or 10 years from now, when we want to retire, we just flip a switch and we call it our own personal retirement home. And we have a doctor or a nurse on staff, or our yoga instructor, or the personal chef.
Yeah.
But we have everything we need because we're living resort lifestyle. And we're seeing that happening with a lot of even the new rental buildings that are being built. A good new rental building has a gym, has an amenities room, has electric bikes, has a community room, because people want they want to get to know their neighbors again, right? We missed that, and we're realizing that that's so much a part of what we need in life, is to get, building friendships. And so there's nothing like sitting around with a group of people who are travelers, locals, people from multicultural, different societies, and multi-ethnic, multi-age group. And man, you solve the world's problems with that group of people, because you really realize that we all want the same thing.
Yeah.
And you have those kinds of conversations with a good meal and a glass of wine, and you're like, wow, this is incredible.
Well, you sold me on it. It sounds really good.
Yep.
I have a question for you, for those investors listening, and they're like, it sounds good. One thing I'm worried about is, what does the management look like from a distance? It's not as simple as, oh, my short-term rental is just down the road, or it's just down in the basement, or whatever that looks like. What does that look like from a management perspective, and then systems that you would put in place to help that?
Yeah, great question. So again, from a management perspective, you're getting economies of scale.
Yeah.
Right. So if I hire a manager to hire my one-off condo, and a cleaner to clean my one-off condo, or my one-off, let's just say it's my fourplex and I've got 4 suites in it, it's still, the economies of scale, it just makes more sense when you go that little bit bigger. Right. So it's like, why pay? The systems are the same. And this is interesting, because this is kind of one of the things that I'm talking about in one of the new programs that I'm doing, called Buy a Village, which is, whether you are buying your first condo, your first personal home, or you're buying an office tower downtown Vancouver, the steps that you go through are still fairly much the same steps. They have bigger numbers and they have more complexity to them.
Yeah.
But you still need a team, right? You need a good real estate agent, a broker, to find you the right property. You need to have an understanding with yourself, your team, your family, your community, whoever you're buying it with, about why are you buying it.
Yeah.
You need to have good lawyers to put together the deal, the due diligence, the joint venture partnership, the structure, whatever it is. You need to have good lawyers to put the deal together. You need to have good finance and good lending partners and good advisors and good mentors. And you need to have good systems. So whether that is your one unit condo that you're renting out, you still need to have your cleaning systems in place, to have your booking systems in place, to have your schedule in place. So if you are doing economies of scale, then you can hire a lot of that out.
Yes.
And you can hire it out to professionals who are also using economies of scale. So they don't have just one cleaner in Puerto Vallarta, they have 15. And those 15 cleaners, go through and clean these particular hotels, and you're off to the races. So again, it really does come down to looking at it like just a bigger version of that one property that we all started with, right? You still had to close, you still had an exit strategy, right? We always talk about, what's the exit strategy? We talk about having an exit strategy that could mean selling your share in the project, holding on, for maybe an extended period of time, and extending for maybe, say, another 5 years, or saying, hey, we're all ready to retire. Let's go and use that place that we've got in the south of France, and use that as, base one for our retirement home. So having that exit strategy, you should have that in any real estate deal you're doing.
Yeah.
So the systems are almost the same. And then in terms of the specifics to the systems, automation now, there's so many things that you can do with automation, right? You have an automated lock and key. You've got a very particular set of cleaning checklists for your cleaners. You've got your guest experience laid out. You can hire staff locally. You can have staff that you maybe have in the Philippines or Mexico that can be your customer service on your phones. You give them very clear systems and very clear scripts. You empower them to help out if people need some help. And then, again, it all comes down to collaborating with great other businesses in the community. So for someone like myself, who is super passionate about events and traveling and retreats and tourism, you partner with great people who are going to maybe do like a cocktail night for you. And you say, okay, can you run the cocktail party every Wednesday and make it this theme? And it's like, okay, we got it. This is what we're going to do. And then, okay, local tour company, can you take these groups out on a bike tour on, this particular day and show them these particular things? So you partner with other great businesses who are offering great products and services that you want to feature in your property, and you just work out what the collaborative deal is. So affiliations, commissionable programming, partnering with other boutique hotels, doing exchanges, doing retreats. I mean, everybody nowadays is doing retreats. I think I've been invited to, oh my God, I can't keep up, right?
Yeah.
Like, how many retreats are we doing right now? It's like I don't know how many boutique hotel retreats there are going on in the US next month, but it's something like 15 or 16. That's just boutique hotel. Then there's, the capital raising retreats, and there's the women's empowerment retreats. And I'm really happy to see this as well. The men's retreats are coming back.
Yes.
Like, guys, right? You got to go and do your thing, and the women have to just stay out of the way, because we really need the guys to get back to, get out of the basement from watching videos and we want our strong men back. Yeah. So I'm really happy to see so many men's retreats coming back again as well. And I've got friends who are running men's retreats in Toronto and Thailand, and, go for it, right? Yeah. Love it. So there's a retreat for everything.
I love that. Now, how do you go about filling it up so that you lower the vacancies? Where are you putting yourself out on? Is this just the Airbnb thing? Are you taking extra steps? What does that look like?
Yeah, so I think one of the really cool things about, having a women's real estate network is we have an incredible community already built in. So when you buy these properties with people who have these networks, I mean, first of all, your friends are going to want to come down and see your new place.
Yeah.
Their families are going to want to come down and see what they've invested in. All of these retreats are available. So there's a number of different ways that people are booking through these. So when you get started, you're still going to use a lot of the booking systems, booking.com, Airbnb, VRBO, whatever they are. There's all kinds of hotel reservation systems that are great and popular, and you just kind of pick the ones that you chat with your other fellow boutique hotel B&B owners and say, hey, which ones are you using and what's really working for you? And then you really build out your great systems again, your really good direct booking website. So your website that shows, what is it about this space that's going to attract people, right? Is it the Wednesday wine night? Is it the quality of the rooms? Is it the proximity to the beach? And you tell those stories. And again, the key thing that we're seeing now if we compare to, your typical mom and pop hotel, the story isn't there. And it's so unfortunate, because there's so many great stories that these properties probably have.
Yeah.
But because it's, the older generation, and they haven't really systematized and modernized their, not only their hotel, but the stories that they could be sharing about those hotels. Those are gold. I mean, I remember when I was running the property, the Eco Garden in Bondi Beach, Australia, we had people from Sweden, we had people from Italy, we had teachers, we had a guy who was like on the nth degree of being sustainable. And then we had a guy who was a venture capitalist and was investing in oil businesses in Russia. I mean, and you get guys like these having a conversation together, and like I say, these are world-changing conversations. But the stories that we can pull out of that is, that the Swedish gentleman took a sabbatical from work for a year and brought his wife and his daughter. And by the end of his stay with us, he was like, hey, I'm going to now invest in solar power instead of oil. So he went and invested in a solar power company in South Africa, right?
Wow.
And his daughter looked forward every day to going and feeding the chickens and then putting things in the compost bin. And I remember he yelled up to me one day, a typical Swede, like 6'4", big blonde guy. And he's like, hey, Liza, I'm putting my compost in the compost bin. I hope you're proud of me. And we burst out laughing, right? Because it's just never in a million years would you think that this, big Swedish guy who's investing in oil in Russia would suddenly be like showing his daughter how to compost. So those are the things that, you can tell in video and on a website, and you can tell those great stories where you've had an impact on people's lives who've come and stayed with you. I've got 90 reviews on Airbnb, and some of them are like, hey, great stay. And others are like, staying with Liza, staying at her property, staying in this neighborhood. They've written a book for me, right? They've written that book on my behalf, and that's out there for me to share in any way that I can. So the opportunity to grow your boutique hotel from your direct booking is huge, because we've all got these networks, we've got this accessibility, we've got these systems in place, and people are hungry for travel again.
Yeah. No, I couldn't agree more. Now, what I'm thinking is, for those potential investors who've been on the long-term rental side of things, and they're looking to transition potentially into short-term, and maybe the strategy really intrigues them, but they're like, Liza, how do I go about crunching those numbers? How do I calculate what my vacancy is going to look like, and how do I know if I'm getting a good deal and all that good stuff? Could you touch on that?
Absolutely. And again, there's tools for that, right? So, when one of the great things about living in the time that we're living in right now is solutions happen so fast.
Yeah.
So, there's a lot of, and I'm just going to expand on this for a minute, if I may.
Sure.
There's a lot of people who are seeing the doom and gloom, and there's a lot of shit going on in the world right now. I hope you don't mind me saying that.
All good.
but I'm always optimistic, because we can't go and live our daily lives as if like any second the sky is going to fall, because then the sky will fall. The group of us who are optimistic, we have to continue to be the light, and we have to continue to be the problem solvers and the innovators and the people who go out on the skinny branches out of our comfort zones and say, yeah, I know the sky is falling, but it hasn't fallen today. And so I'm going to keep going, and I'm going to keep trying to find the positive in things, right?
Yes.
So the key point that I'm making is we live in a time where opportunities open up every day. And we live in a time where one person can start an online business and have clients around the world. I participated in a women's summit last week. It was basically like a 24-hour global summit. So we had women from Kenya, Zanzibar, Sydney. Places that, I was like, oh, wow, this is really interesting names, right?
Yeah.
Just fascinating places where people were calling in from, and we're all like hanging out online together. So the long answer to your question is, how do I crunch the numbers? Well, you use one of the tools. I mean, there's so many tools. There's a small boutique hotel booking tool that I think I bought for $100 from a gentleman in the US. And it's complex. Like, it calculates out everything, your staff, your hours, your everything. I mean, it does everything. It was, I don't know, I think it's 10 tabs. It averages out your nightly, it averages out your 5-year growth. I mean, it does everything. And then, there's the really simple ones that you start with, like I always like to do the comparison of buying an 8-unit apartment building in Victoria to a 12-unit boutique hotel in Mexico. Because when you see something that's that simple in terms of numbers, $20,000 a month, $20,000 a week, which would you rather have? Oh, and by the way, that's $20,000 Canadian versus $20,000 US. Which would you rather have? Do you want to spend winters in Mexico? Do you want to spend winters in Canada? So again, the tools are all there. There's spreadsheets, there's systems, there's all of these, so many boutique hotel operators that are doing coaching programs and sharing all of their tips and tricks and tools. And so everything that you need is out there. Everything. Like there's nothing that we can sort of think about that we're like, oh, we really need an X that we can't probably find a solution for within 24, 48 hours. Maybe a little bit longer if we've got other things on our plate and we can't make finding that solution our immediate priority.
Yeah.
But all of those tools are there. Your cash flow, your sales projections, your inbound, your tourist competition. It's all accessible. And again, it just takes a team to help you find that. And when you've got a number of properties or a number of people, for example, and you're working on it together and you're investing together, some of that investment goes to some of those upfront setup costs, right? Like people are sometimes saying, well, if I invest, $50,000, is my share, worth exactly 50,000? It's like, well, you've got to put some money in for setup costs as well. Right. So there's management fees, there's setup, there's stabilization, there's all of the things that go along with that. And so it's all part of the system, and it's all out there. It's all findable.
I love that. Now, and that's so true, by the way. It absolutely is true. With the internet nowadays, everything is there. Like anything you could get an answer to anything.
Yeah.
So yeah, no. I fully agree with that. It's an honest answer. Now, without a doubt, I absolutely see the benefits to this, and I see the value add to this strategy. For those more analytical investors, where it's about the numbers, could you share some of what that looks like? Maybe for you, like maybe a good experience, a good deal, and then potentially even, because I like highlighting the good and the bad, potentially even something that maybe didn't go as planned, and what that looked like, how you solved that.
The deals that I kind of would like to talk about are the ones that we missed out on because of people's hesitation, right? And so it's very interesting how many opportunities there's still that fear around investing in another country for one, right? So if we take, okay, it's my first time investing outside of Canada or my first time investing outside of the US. If you talk to a lot of financial planners, like good financial planners, good tax strategists nowadays, they're going to say, don't have all your wealth in one currency, right?
Yeah. Don't
have all your wealth in one city if you're in real estate, right? You don't want to have everything that you own invested just in Edmonton or just in Victoria. You want to have some diversity. So for us, that first property in Mexico, people were just so nervous. So even though it's like $1 million of vendor financing that's being offered, so we only have to come up with $1 million for a property that is making $20,000 a week with two people who don't even want to own it anymore. Right? They don't even want it. They're not running it. Yeah. They're just taking like referrals that come in from when someone in their family ran it 5 years ago. And these people just continue to book year after year after year. So it's almost like the missed opportunity is kind of what hurts the most, because it's like, damn it, that was such a good one. And there's still, and right now, I mean, we really are, I've been saying we're in a real estate spin cycle, right? Because we are feeling the effects of what's going on right now, globally, politically. We've got, again, if I just use Mexico as an example, a new president incumbent, she starts in October. So people are like, is she going to repeal some of the foreign buying opportunities there? So people are kind of waiting. Then, of course, we have the U.S. election. Yeah. And, I'm sure you, like me, listen to U.S. news, and you probably get it from multiple sides so you can get the real story. Yeah. There's people who are saying the U.S. is on the verge of a complete crash, and there's others that are saying the opportunity in the U.S. is going to be unprecedented. Get your ducks in a row because you better be ready to hop in, right? So we've got these extremes and then everything in between. And then, of course, in Canada, we've got, you know, a lot of questions around our federal political parties right now. And then we've got a BC election coming up. And so people are really feeling kind of spun out, like we're in the spin cycle. And so I can kind of understand how it's a little bit scary to be investing right now. And so one of the things that we talk about in general is whatever you're investing in, it should be really for the long term.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the biggest lessons that I've learned is I got into a couple of things that I thought were going to be shorter term. And it's like, oh, no, because the market changed.
Yeah.
So things that I thought I was only going to have for a year or two, I'm probably going to have for 5 or 6 years. So people really need to be ready to hold for the longer term. And so to get back to your question, because I know I kind of, went the long way around, I think the more important thing in terms of, looking at the deal is if you get into a deal, can you get in and stay in for at least 5 years, right? You've got to be able to get in and stay in for at least 5 years. You may not have to, but you need to be prepared to get in for 5 years. And then looking at, and it all comes down to the fundamentals again, right? When I look at a place like Mexico is on track to basically become a superpower. They're nearshoring. They are doing more manufacturing that Canadians and Americans are gobbling up than anybody. They're doing a great job of manufacturing. Their middle class is growing. So when you see a middle class that's growing, you're like, okay, the country is generally becoming wealthier, and places that you used to only see tourists, you're now seeing a really great balance of Mexicans as well as tourists. So you've got kind of, 50% of the people who are spending time in Puerto Vallarta and Bucerias are Mexicans coming for their summer holiday, which is fantastic. That's what you want.
Yeah.
You want that cultural mixing. You want that growing middle class. So the more important thing to look at when you're looking at the deal, to me, is what are the long-term fundamentals? Is tourism growing? Is the government stable? Is the property in an area where if you had to turn it into a retirement home, that people are going to want to actually retire? Right? So the numbers, obviously, you want to be making sure that you've got positive cash flow, that you've got a good contingency fund. With boutique hotels, that you've got your operating expenses laid out really well. It's always great to look at, again, you look at the mom and pop taxes or expense list that they provide. And, there's nothing in there about, replacing dishes or linens or, they basically have paying staff, hydro, water, a handful of other small expenses, but it's like, okay, where's your soft costs? Where's your furniture upgrades? Where's your annual maintenance? And so it's making sure that who you're working with is looking through all of those things in great detail and doing the due diligence with someone who also, either owns in that location or is a good comparison for that location. So does that kind of answer that reasonably well?
Yeah, no, and okay. It was a loaded question for sure. I get that. So how would you recommend someone get started? Maybe they want to be an active investor in this, but it's all new territory for them. Would you say, hey, go find some communities, which is usually the first step for most people, like investor communities, so that you have people to riff off of, ask questions, get to know things a little better. What should they do from there on out? How do they take actionable steps to actually one day get into being in the same position that you're in?
Yeah. Exactly. So I think, if you're going to be an active investor in this kind of space, right, you are definitely someone who has invested in real estate already. Yeah. Right. So you have, you've done some flips, you've owned some property, you've been a landlord, you have been a shareholder in a property. Maybe you've done purely exempt market and you're in a REIT or you're invested through an exempt market dealer. but you definitely want to have, have looked at some 30-page, 80-page offering memorandums and documents. So it's like, it's not Greek, right?
Yeah.
Like I remember looking at my first offering memorandum, your first OM, and you're like, oh my God, what is this? What have I gotten myself into? It's 80 pages long and it's like risk, risk, risk. It's terrifying. So I think, it's really important that if you're looking at it from that perspective, that you've already done some serious investing. Now, having said that, one of the largest cohorts that's going to be entering this space is multi-generational families. So we're kind of getting back to the village. And this is one of my most passionate things that I talk about is we're much healthier when we are living in community. And so I'm seeing a lot more people get their family together and go and buy the villa in Italy. Yeah. Right? Like, it's like, why are we struggling to make ends meet in Canada? We've got our family spread across the country. Let's just all go back to the homeland, buy a villa, have an olive grove and a winery, and live happily on the farm together. And when you read documentaries or watch documentaries or read books about things like the blue zones, right, it all comes back to community. And so even though I talk about, that the typical active investor is going to be the one who's looking at these boutique hotels, it is also really people who are looking at it from that community aspect. Like, I want to get for me, it's one of the reasons I started Ren. I want to get my 5 best friends together that I'm going to age with, and we want to live in a rock star house, on the beach side that we can come and go from, that we can share with our friends, that we can do all the things we love, and it's not going to break us because one property isn't going to make us all mortgage poor. We're doing it together. And so it's people who are really looking for a particular lifestyle, and don't want to be mortgage poor. And a lot of people it really also appeals to are people who are looking more for that sustainability, because it is more sustainable, financially more sustainable. It's more sustainable from a usage point of view. It's more sustainable from a building it point of view. And so the people who are looking at this, the active investors, absolutely. Active investors for sure. They're going to love it because it's got all kinds of juicy bits, and it can make really good cash flow. And there are ways to get really active, right? You could be an operator or you can be a working partner. Yeah. Working partners for me would be someone who wants to manage the property, right? So that I can go and start the next one. Or maybe my working partner might be the capital raiser, someone who's going to go out and raise the capital, and then we bring the right groups of people into each of the different properties because they're all going to have a slightly different personality. So I think, active investors for sure, to get going, they're going to be, diving in and looking at numbers and reading things and deciding how they want to be active. And then passive investors who are just looking at the bottom line, it's kind of a no-brainer. Like, we are moving towards a global economy. Yep. Whether we like it or not, whether the governments have caught up. I'm reading every day about who else has just launched a digital nomad visa. Thailand's just launching a digital or updating their digital nomad visa. I think I was mentioning at the beginning when we started talking, Spain doesn't want tourists, but they've just launched or cleaned up their digital nomad visa, right? So they want to welcome people to come and work in their country. Yeah. And bring the money that they're making from working earning in a different country, but they don't want to provide the housing for them. So the boutique hotels are the thing that you're going to get. And the cool thing about that from a passive investment side is when you think about these people who are coaching consultants, a lot of them they have money, right? They're making good money. They can work from anywhere in the world. They're choosing to go somewhere where they want to, they love the community. They want to go out and spend money on wine and meals and tourism. So they're paying good money for these properties. So the opportunity to make much more money on these properties is great. And the opportunity to buy them over the next few years at fairly low costs is also great. Because I was mentioning There's a lot of mom and pop businesses out there. I'm not sure. Do you follow Cody Sanchez, El Rey?
I do, yes.
So, right. So Cody talks a lot about the number of mom and pop businesses that are being sold in the next, I think, 12 years, 5 to 10 years, 12 million in the US, mom and pop businesses.
Insane.
A lot of those mom and pop businesses are RV parks, mobile home parks, boutique hotels, licensed bed and breakfasts, right? So a licensed bed and breakfast has a hotel-like license, if not a straight-up hotel license. It's not the same as an Airbnb. It's been licensed by the city to run as a little inn. And all of those things that are going to be sold, a lot of young people don't necessarily want them because they're not sexy online businesses.
Yeah.
Right? So, what does she say? Don't buy the sexy. Buy the thing that makes sense and makes money, and buy the mom and pop and get the vendor financing. So the money is like, sometimes people look at the numbers we run and they're like, that doesn't make sense. It's like, what doesn't make sense? It's too much. Okay, well, let me take a few zeros off. Does that look better? Well, yeah, that seems more reasonable. Okay, no problem. So
I love that. And one thing is you sort of thrown a couple of different places out there for those people thinking, where are some good spots that I should be looking? Do you have any recommendations? And then I'll let you answer that first. I have a follow-up question, but I don't want to load this question up too much.
Yeah. I mean, I think there's a number of places now, and I'm going to be probably listening to what Andrew Henderson from the Nomad Capitalist says. He's got his next live event. I believe it's in Malaysia, and they'll be making their kind of annual announcements about, okay, with what's going on in the world, where do we go now, right? So for me, the mom and pop opportunities in the US are huge. They're absolutely huge. And when I think of cities that I love in the US, Nashville. Like, man, give me a funky boutique hotel in Nashville or on one of the amazing lakes in Tennessee. I'm there. San Diego, right? San Diego, California is still, to me, one of the most beautiful cities. It's just, it's got that perfect year-round temperature. And there's still opportunity there. Florida, the state of Florida, whether you like DeSantis or not, it's more business friendly. I have a number of friends who are they're buying apartment buildings that are resort-like communities in Florida. Those are growing, right? Especially when you take us snowbirds from Canada. We don't want to spend time here in the wintertime if we don't have to. So what are we doing? We're going down to places like Florida and spending time in resort-like communities, right? Yes. So those are things that are growing. Obviously, places like Costa Rica, Colombia in South America is, comes up a lot. Yep. Thailand has started coming up more recently. There's so many places. It's kind of almost like you're developing. I hate using that term, developing nations, but that's what people kind of are used to that moniker. Mexico, for sure. Mexico, everything that I read about Mexico is that it's on track to be growing as a power. Places that you don't really think of, even though we'd like to, New Zealand, Australia, right? It's almost like what we call the legacy countries. It's too expensive and there's too many restrictions. I mean, when I first started this journey, I went to go and buy a youth hostel in Australia. And the minute I landed, they tightened up the foreign ownership rules. And the year that I was there, they made them tighter and tighter and tighter and tighter, to the point where I really couldn't even stay and manage the little beautiful property that I was looking after in Bondi Beach anymore. And that broke my heart, let me tell you. Giving up swimming the bay every morning at Bondi Beach was a pretty hard thing for someone who's a water baby to give up. But there's so many places. But it really is your countries that are welcoming investment, welcoming businesses, welcoming digital nomads, welcoming the location independent traveler. There's great stories of properties all over the world. So, I mean, really the sky's the limit. Everybody's going to have their preferences, but I still like the US. I love Mexico. A few places in South America that I'm really keen on, and I've got a good friend in Thailand, and we're maybe going to go and take a look at a property or two in Thailand in February. So if there's people who want to come and join us, I think we're going to put a little tour together for that. But that, just as an example, 8 cottages, 150 meters off the beach for $1 million Canadian dollars. $1 million Canadian.
Wow.
Right? There's your, get your 8 best friends together and go buy 8 cottages in Thailand,
Yeah.
You don't even need 8. You can buy 5. Get 5 of your friends together.
I love that. You know what I am going to do is I'm going to leave all your info in the description below so that people can find you. And yeah, for those people who want to hop on in February, they know where to find you. This has been fantastic. This has been fun. And honestly, I can keep it going. I really can. You have a wealth of knowledge, and you've traveled a lot, and you have so much packed in between those 2 years. Like I want to dive into one of my favorite segments, and I'm really excited to see what your answer is. No pressure. It's called time capsule, right? So let's imagine that you stumbled across a time machine that allows you to travel back and forth in time. Can't change anything, of course, but you can give and receive advice to your older or younger self. First, let's go back to when you were 18 years ago, not too long ago. What advice would you give your younger self with the knowledge you now have? This can be business, familial, investing, whatever. It could be a combination of them all. What advice would you give your 18-year-old self?
Elray, it's so easy. I mean, I just got the full body goosebumps because it's one of the things that I'm really passionate about. And it's one of the things that I'm really passionate about, what we need to tell young people now. You have to make some sacrifices. And if you don't want to make sacrifices, then at least make some compromises. So we need, and I'm getting full body goosebumps. Usually when I'm getting full body goosebumps, that's the indication that we're really onto something here and they're continuing. So that's me being completely authentic. It's really hard not to chase the instant gratification.
Yeah.
Because it's so accessible to us now.
Yeah.
So if I was to go back to my younger self, I would sit her down and say, focus on 1 or 2 things, get a mentor, someone who is seriously accomplished, and work with that person for a really decent amount of time so that you can build now, so you can make some compromises now, make some sacrifices now if you're willing to make sacrifices. My problem was I was never good with sacrifice.
Yeah.
So now I'm okay with compromise because I didn't make the sacrifices. But if you want to get ahead for your future, you got to do some hard work when you're younger. And one of the reasons why, I'm 55 now. If I had done this 15, 20 years ago, I'd be retired.
Yeah.
I'd be fully retired. I'm not there yet. I've probably got another kind of 5 years of teaching people, coaching, acquiring some property, getting my core group of women and men together that I want to hang out with. I mean, we've got a pretty solid group, but having, really great people is hey, do you want to come to France next week? Oh, I can't. I'm going to the Thailand property. So, I was so lucky. I mean, I got to travel for work. I reached an age, I was 28 when I was working in banking, and I was like, this isn't for me.
Yeah.
This is not for me. So I just left. I mean, I left it all behind. I worked on cruise ships. I went traveling. I lived in Australia twice. I got to work at the Sydney Olympic Games, traveled around the world. I mean, just had an amazing time. But if I had been better at saving, better at planning, a little bit more focused, even on just one kind of angle, right? Than being oh man, I'm going to go work at the Olympics. Oh, I'm going to go be on a yacht for the Millennium and get paid great money. Yeah, I mean I guess focus is the key word. And focus when you're young. Just find a way, and you don't have to do it by yourself, right? Yeah. Get a mentor, join a group. Get into a group of people who are a little bit older than you. I mean, one of the things that I say always is don't be afraid to be the stupidest person in the room.
Yeah.
If I'm not the stupidest person in the room, I'm in the wrong room.
Yeah. Oh, 100%.
Right?
100%.
Yeah.
And surprisingly enough, as as almost obvious as that may sound when you think about it logically, it's not one that people stress enough. Like, this is actually the first time someone's mentioned that as their piece of advice. So I think that's solid, because it's the combination of focus, which is very hard in the world we live in today, with the internet and all the distractions we have, all the shiny coin syndromes, all the different things we could do. So it's the focus, but in order to ensure that you're focusing on the right thing, having a mentor to guide your focus is super important. So I love that. I love that combination. Mic drop. I want to see, looking ahead to your 80th birthday, what advice do you imagine that your future self would offer you at your present age?
Build the friendships more than anything else. Yeah. They're more valuable than anything else. Simon Sinek just did a great podcast with Steve Bartlett on the Diary of a CEO. And I remember listening to it and crying, and I get choked up even now thinking about it. We're not building friendships. Young people especially are not building friendships. And again, the guys are spending way too much time alone. When I'm 80, I use my mom's expat community down in Mexico as the example. And my friends who have come down to stay with us in Mexico and have witnessed it, they're like, these women have it dialed in. They are there's 50 of them. They all live in the community in a 5 to 10 minute walk from each other. They charter buses. And I'm not talking one bus. They charter 2 or 3 buses. They go to concerts in the country. They go and work at the orphanage. They volunteer at the dog shelter. They go golfing. They go for dinner. They have bingo takeovers where 50 of them show up and play bingo for an afternoon. 50 of them get dressed up and go out for St. Patrick's Day in Puerto Vallarta. Oh my gosh. They play pickleball, they hike, they walk, they swim. So I'm so lucky in that I'm getting to witness exactly where I want to be when I'm 80. And not only do I get to witness it, I'm participating in it because I go and spend time with these women. And when I do my next book, part of the story in that book is the stories of these women who are a lot of us wouldn't have this life if it wasn't for this community. So, again, sorry, long answer, but build those friendships. I was gonna drop an F-bomb there, but I won't. But just build them. Build the friendships. Yeah. Build the friendships. Pick up the phone. Go and have a coffee. Reach out. I just remember because I'm such a relationship builder. So when someone phones me and says, "Hey, Liza, I'd love to see you," I'm like, "Oh, hey, yeah. Somebody's called me," right? Instead of waiting for me to call them because I'm the instigator. So be the person who picks up the phone, right? And just don't text someone, pick up the phone and say, "Hi, I was thinking about you. And, I was just listening to this crazy woman talk about how important friendships are. And I thought of you and I wanted to tell you, I really value our friendship and I want us to be friends for the rest of our lives. And this is how we're going to do it."
I couldn't agree more. I would go ahead and say that it's the most powerful and important asset to have in your life. Yeah. I love that. I love it. So insightful. So insightful. This has been fantastic. Honestly, it's really, been great. Really so has. Fun. It has been fun. I've loved this. I've loved every minute of this. I wish that we could keep this going for another hour or two, just so I could squeeze some more knowledge out of you. And I'm sure everyone else listening to this thinks the exact same thing. Now, guys, it doesn't have to end here. Of course, for everyone listening, I will be sure to leave as much information and links for Liza as possible. But for those of you that are potentially listening on the go, maybe you're driving, where would be the best place for people to learn more about you?
Yeah, so the easiest thing is ren.club. So that's WREN.CLUB, and send me an email at liza@ren.club. So that's LIZA@WREN.CLUB. We tried to keep it as few letters as possible, so it's pretty easy. And we're around. We're here.
It does not get easier than that. I don't think that's hard to remember at all. So I'll leave it all in the description below for everyone else. But honestly, Liza, I really want to thank you. You don't understand. I really appreciate all the knowledge and advice that you've shared with the listeners today. It's been fantastic. It's been fun. And I hope to see you on here again.
Awesome. Thank you, El Rey. I had a great time.
Before you leave, if you enjoyed this episode, then you absolutely want to check out the episode with Corey, where we dive into how he was able to build a $40 million real estate portfolio. This is your host, Alray Noble, signing off.